Well, everybody's emoting. Nobody is thinking. And that's the first problem. And the second problem is that they harbor delusions. And what are these delusions? Well, number one, that we are all powerful, that we are invincible, that nothing bad can happen to us. Today, there were also comments in the New York Times about, well, the Biden administration is warming to the idea that we should help the Ukrainians target and attack places inside Russia itself, inside Crimea especially. There's no sense at all that we're not sitting here in isolation. We can be armed. There are any ways for the Russians to attack us. They have exercised extraordinary restraint. I doubt very seriously that we would exercise that kind of restraint if there were large numbers of Russians or Chinese in Mexico beefing up a Mexican army to attack us.
You know, this is the magazine, the Trends Journal, and it used to be a quarterly. Spring 2014, when the United States started the overthrow of, this is an article by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Assistant Treasury Secretary of the Ronald Reagan. Washington is driving the world to the final war. World hegemony is not a right America has earned. He goes on to say, Washington concluded that Russia needed to be confronted with or distracted by problems that would leave the Russian government less confident or able to counter Washington's aggression elsewhere. Ukraine presented the perfect opportunity for Washington to advance its hegemonic agenda. In a speech at the National Press Club last December, which was December 2013, Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland boasted that Washington had invested $5 billion in non-governmental organizations in Ukraine for the purpose of NGOs to teach democracy. You remember that. You remember her speech.
Yeah.
You have no idea. They have no idea.
Yeah, these are the unelected bureaucrats who are making policy. And I don't really think, quite frankly, President Biden is even remotely involved in any of this. I think he just is handed things to read, and he reads it into the teleprompter or the television cameras. So the people around him and the people at the State Department, over at the Department of Defense that there are the quote-unquote Biden handlers, they're running the show. Nobody elected them. No one has consulted the American people. I dare say that if you consulted the American people on the wisdom of war with Russia, you would get a resounding no, overwhelmingly the majority. But they're not consulted.
No, the people have no idea what's going on. They got to think. CNN keeps running this article about this guy Walsh or whatever that killed his wife. But I care about this stuff. This is not news. Elvis Presley's doing it. Like, great, that's good for entertainment news, but don't tell me that's news. A football player gets tackled and gets a heart attack, and it's news for a week and a half. But if you didn't own up, what's going on?
You know, it distracts everyone from what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, you ready?
Yep.
UK to go further in support of Ukraine. The United Kingdom is set to provide Ukraine with more than 200 armored vehicles in addition to a batch of Challenger 2 main battle tanks. This is today. It's one after another. They keep ramping this up. And you ready for this one? As I said, they're preparing us for nuclear war. This just came out today. Study, this is like you're talking to a 6-year-old. Study identifies best place to hide from nuclear blast shockwave. The corner of a room is the safest spot to hide from the massive shockwave caused by a nuclear explosion. You ready? Scientists from Cyprus have discovered after running computer simulation of the catastrophic event. Scientists from Cyprus? How about the clowns from Disneyland? Who the hell are you talking to?
Yeah, it's depressing. It's depressing, but it probably will get far less attention than Lisa Presley's demise.
Yeah.
Because Americans don't understand what's at stake.
You know, we need all these billionaires, not a penny for peace. Where are the peace? You know, I had the rally up here. I had, Judge Napolitano, Scott Ritter, Gary Null, and and Phil Giraldi. People don't know who Phil Giraldi is, but he's a former top CIA guy that goes into Bush's office and shows him the facts. There's no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and Bush tells him to get out of here, leave the office, and Giraldi, being a real man, quit. We sent out several thousand press releases over the course of 3 weeks. The streets were packed here. Zero coverage. Zero coverage. But if I had a rally to support Ukraine and put up a Ukrainian flags everywhere, it would have been great news coverage.
Of course.
So what do you suggest? What do you suggest we do to stop this?
I think that the right in the country, as opposed to the left, I'm talking about, and the right has to be defined simply as Americans who care about and love their country. I've long been disappointed in the two-party system. I don't see much difference between Republicans and Democrats because all wholly owned subsidiaries of various lobbies. And that
wholly owned subsidiaries of various lobbies. Perfectly said. Go on, I'm sorry.
And as a result, that we no longer have people in Washington representing the interests of the American people. I felt strongly that we should have a new party completely. And I think we would attract large numbers of Democrats as well as Republicans into it if we made clear what we want to do with this party, what the platform would be. And that platform has to be one of avoiding unnecessary conflict. Yeah. It has to enshrine peace and prosperity as our top goals in the world. It has to give up this notion that nothing can happen in the world unless we somehow or another are shaping the outcome. In fact, we don't need to be involved with most of the world. And what happens in most of the world on any given day doesn't make much difference to us.
No.
And the other thing is talk about our sovereignty. You know, we're talking about Ukrainian sovereignty, talking about ours. We've given it up. We've abandoned the borders. We don't enforce law. We've undermined, law enforcement. We're exalting criminality. We're treating it as though it's something good. This all has to go away. But the only way to get rid of it is to build a new platform, and that platform has to have media. In other words, you've got to develop the alternative to what is dominating us in the mainstream. Call it a free speech platform or a confederation of platforms, whatever you want. I don't see anybody on the right with any money stepping forward to do anything.
I know. That's what I was saying. So here's my suggestion. RFK Jr. for president and Judge Andrew Napolitano for vice president. And here's my thinking. I got it framed, actually, a couple of months ago. I came across it, and I found it. And it's from the Daily News. And then I found this one. RFK goes home. He's buried. Imagine RFK Jr., his father's assassinated, his uncle's assassinated, the President of the United States. This guy must have a heart and emotion that none of us could ever imagine. And the Kennedy name would bring in the left. The Napolitano would bring in the right, and people with an open mind that know that there's, and that, again, I don't know anybody that knows the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the details of it better than Judge Andrew Napolitano. Fact after fact after fact. So then we bring them on the libertarian ticket because they have ballots in all the states. And when the money starts coming in, we also form a new third party. That's my thing. What do you think?
Well, it's worth trying. Unfortunately, my view is that not a whole hell of a lot is going to happen until everything implodes.
But again,
Americans aren't prepared to do very much.
Getting that part. Suppose we had the money behind us and the power behind us to get RFK Jr. and Judge Napolitano to run. What do you think their opportunity, the chances of, if we had the money behind us, for them to win?
Without the collapse, financially and economically, no chance.
You don't think they could defeat them?
No. You have to have the financial collision first, the collision with reality. That you can't simply spend money that you don't have. You cannot continue to engage in these wealth transfers.
Well, that would be part of their platform. And again,
Americans have to go through, I'm sorry to say, this crucible. I think they're going to have to suffer. Look, everybody knew that the revolution in France was coming for decades. Nothing happened for decades until the people of Paris in 1789 could not afford to buy bread. That's what triggered change. And unfortunately, until people are miserable, until they're uncomfortable, till they can't heat their homes, till they can't drive their cars, they can't pay for gasoline. And look, we're on that path. You know that, Joe. We're on this. When that happens, then there will be an appetite for people to come in who are not part of the status quo and make profound change. But we're not there yet.
Well, I agree with you. The whole thing, I go out. I work very hard there with the magazine. It's a weekly, so I like to get out. The streets are dead at night now. They're dead. 9 o'clock at night, dead. I went to a top place last night with a friend, and there was hardly anybody there. I went to New Year's Eve. I went to a party, came back after 12 o'clock on the major road up here at Kingston, between Woodstock and here. Hardly a car on the road. The whole thing has changed. People are going down. But I also want to point out that the latest Gallup poll came out and showed that people rank congressmen lower than used car sales. So that hatred and disgust of the parties is there among the people already.
Well, that's an insult to used car sales. They're actually not bad people.
Well, I'm just saying, But listen, thanks so much. And oh, by the way, you said about our borders, securing our borders. That, what's his name? Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, speaking of the Allied forces, just a couple of days ago was January 17th. On January 17th, 1961, he gave his farewell address, and he warned the American people that the military-industrial complex was robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and future children. And here we are. And I mentioned JFK. I have his speech from he spoke to the graduates of the University of American University on June of 1963. And his whole speech, the entire speech, was about peace and about the Soviet Union. Yeah, they're blah, 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 blah. But, they've lost 20 million people in World War II. Their country was destroyed. These are good people. Very positive. And at the end, he says, America will not go to war. This is then 5 months later, Jack, you're dead. I'm going back to the border, just making the connection. LBJ comes in. 8 months later, the Vietnam War starts. And LBJ was the guy that did away with the immigration policy to bring in cheap labor. I remember growing up as a kid, I used to hear my parents, and I didn't understand what they were talking about, that their cousin Constantino couldn't come over to America. There were limits on how many people you could bring in. And then in my book, Trends 2000, that I wrote in 1996, Bill Clinton did this thing with the H-1B visas to bring in more and more cheap labor. So that's what they've been doing. They've been bringing and letting all these people come in because the bigs that control everything, all they want is cheap labor.
Well, I think LBJ said, I may be wrong, it may have been somebody else, but I think LBJ said, if I cannot find enough people in this country to vote Democratic, I'll import them.
Yeah.
And I really think that's been the message.
And that's what they're doing now. Again, when you and I were young guys, They had drugstores. They had stationery stores. They had grocery stores. They had hardware stores. And now they're just chains. Staples owns it. Home Depot owns it. Lowe's owns it. Kroger owns it. And Walmart owns it. All we want is cheap labor. Amazon owns it. And to me, that's why they don't care. Let them come in. We need the cheap labor.
Well, we've not paid attention for a long time, and we're about to reap the whirlwind. And I'm afraid that reaping the whirlwind is an unavoidable necessity if we're to rescue this country.